Do you agree with the legal settlements in the West Bank?
With the illegal settlements? I mean, so it is.
First, do you consider the settlements illegal?
No.
Under international.
That's insane, by the way. To be honest, this is one of those issues that's so like obviously wrong that it doesn't matter how good of a debate lord you are. If one side has like pretty elementary basic facts, like if they have a somewhat decent understanding of the things that took place, even when you look at the asymmetry of violence, you can usually deal with a person. That's the reason why most people that want to defend Israel don't necessarily defend Israel on the facts. They usually defend Israel by saying that, by trying to trap you into saying something and then claiming that it's anti-Semitic. Like they'll turn around and be like, oh, well, what you said was actually anti-Semitic. And most people don't want to be bigoted, and so they're like fearful. It's understandable if you don't speak on this issue at all beyond the fact that you're, for Palestinian emancipation, because like people are pretty vicious. And if you're not well equipped to counter certain talking points, like people will bully you. They will absolutely say, they will absolutely make you feel like you're a piece of shit. They'll be like, oh, how dare you say these sorts of things? You just don't understand the situation. It's complex, it's complicated. It's like, it's not complicated at all. And the reality of the matter is like most of the arguments devolve into you're being anti-Semitic. That's like the only counter that defenders of Israel have in this situation. Think about it. Get back to it. Ben Shapiro getting absolutely cumstered and dumpstered by a bunch of wokes, okay? This is where the wokes fight back, folks. We watched pieces of this yesterday. It was awesome. It was cathartic. It was fantastic. And I'm very excited to finish this off. This is about Israel-Palestine and peaceful transfer of power. I definitely just want to watch the Israel-Palestine proportion of this because, like, it's a good ass video. It's a good ass video. It got 5.7 million views in one day. It's so good. I've never seen. It's literally just like a sequence after sequence of just Ben getting clapped up. It's like when he goes on these college campus tours and shit, and it's Steven Crowder style change my mind ass videos where he like obviously he has a you're a slave to the numbers, let it go. What? Shut up, bitch. The comments are surprisingly right-wing and in support of Ben, though. Wait, what? That's not surprising. That's YouTube comments. That's just YouTube comments. Who gives a shit? Watch it with your own two eyes and make that assessment on your own. Let's continue.
How asylum is actually interpreted. So my next claim is
Israel-Hamas war would not have started under Donald Trump. Now, he said a bunch of ridiculous statements in the beginning of this, and I'm just rewatching it for those.
Is the Israel-Hamas war would not have started under Donald Trump.
Genuinely a stupid ass point to make. Like I've mentioned time and time again, the Abraham Accords, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the permanent annexation of Golan Heights, which is occupied Syrian territory by Israel, are all things that Donald Trump did to greatly escalate the conflict, write the Palestinians out of the equation entirely, causing them to recognize that they had no way out but to fight.
It's good. This process has gotten more conciliatory over the course of time.
Okay, so what evidence do you have to support that claim?
Okay, so the latest reports from the New York Times of internal papers from Yahya Sinwar suggested that he was essentially counting on Iranian interference and help with the October 7th attacks, and that was incentivized by the fact that Iran was attempting to forestall any sort of deal between Israel and the Saudi government for Saudi to join the Abraham Accords. It was very well known at the time, and I happen to know that the Saudi government was very much ready to join the Abraham Accords if Donald Trump had been reelected. If that had happened, that would have forestalled Hamas action because the incentive to have done what happened on October 7th would largely have been gone at that point. The entire purpose of that attack was to prevent the formation of a broader Sunni-Israeli alliance in the Middle East.
Do you think the incentive of October 7th was simply Iranian plot?
I think that the Iranians were certainly interested in facilitating the Hamas attacks,
Now,
and without Iranian support, it would have been very difficult for
I
Hamas
want
to
to
do.
ask you, do you think that the conditions in Gaza in any way factor into October 7th?
I mean, I think that the conditions in Gaza certainly factor into support for Hamas. As far as the specific attack of October 7th as opposed to rocket attacks, the distinction between, for example, continuous rocket attacks that have been happening since 2006 when Hamas took over the Gaza Strip and the wide-scale terror assault of October 7th is sort of a difference in kind.
Now, since 2005, what has Israel done to the Gaza Strip to formulate or allow kind of the otherization of the Palestinian people who live in the Gaza Strip?
Well, I mean, in 2006, Hamas took over, promptly killed everybody who's associated with the Palestinian Authority, has never held an election.
Hamas took control of Gaza after it defeated its rival political party Fatah in elections. Hamas then defeated Fatah's militias after a week of fighting when a coup happened that the United States of America backed, by the way. The United States of America tried to execute a coup where they got Fatah militants to fucking capture Hamas members and torture them. Hamas fought back and completely took over the Gaza Strip in complete control. So just so you guys understand, it was our doing that the election even happened. Fatah said to the United States of America at the time that there should not have been an election. They were not ready for it. They would have lost the election. Hamas ran on an anti-corruption ticket and won due to that reason. And even then, I believe it was like 30% of the vote that they captured. It was never anywhere near as popular as like Arafat was originally in the first ever elections. But of course, by 2006, it was an entirely different scenario where Palestinians had broadly recognized that that negotiating with Israel was not working, and that Israel was using that negotiations process to expand settlements in the West Bank.
Since and has been running the place with an iron fist.
Now, I want to understand now, with an iron fist, is Hamas the one who is putting forth the land, sea, and air blockade in the Gaza Strip?
The land, sea, and air blockade is specifically because Hamas is in control of the Gaza Strip.
Now, I'm confused because if we expect that the October 7th attacks only happened because Iranian influence in the area, I don't see how 17 years of a land, air, sea blockade will happen if that's not a symptom to allowing people basically pressure cook its way into something like that happen.
Okay, the idea that October 7th was specifically as an incident caused by movement between Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah and coordination between those groups for geopolitical reasons is the claim. If the claim that you're making is that October 7th was sort of an inevitability based on the conditions on the ground in the Gaza Strip, that's not exactly how I think foreign policy works.
Yeah, no. People are supposed to take it. They're supposed to eat it over and over again. And you can just like kill them and humiliate them and ruin their lives every single day. That's not how human beings operate. That's not true.
I'm saying foreign policy works in the sense that you can't ignore the overlying cause of an issue. So now when we talk about the Abraham Accords, do you not think that the Palestinian people not involved in the Abraham Accords plays any part into the region remaining unstable, specifically with these two groups of people?
The region got specifically much more stable while Donald Trump was president because of the Abraham Accords.
With again, I don't know how you can go and quantify that when the Palestinian people are not involved. 2023 was the deadliest year for Palestinian children on October 6th, according to a UN report published on October 6th. Now, if we go and keep ignoring the Palestinian problem, then I don't understand how we can continue to act like forging partnerships between Gulf Arab countries is going to promote stability to the region when we're leaving out 2 million people in Gaza and then 2 million people in the West Bank.
It was promoting a lot more stability in the region. For the Saudis, for the Bahrainis, for the UAE.
And then October 7th still, you're telling me October 7th still happened because of geopolitical reasons in that area. If the Palestinians are not addressed in the Abraham Accords, why do you think that there was a need for October 7th to happen?
The reason October 7th happened was specifically because of the confluence of Palestinian desire to put the issue of Palestinians back on the front pages and an Iranian desire to use that as a wedge issue to destroy the Abraham Accords.
Front pages as opposed to what? As opposed to it being silenced through political plays under Donald Trump to promote these Abraham Accords that, again, don't achieve the root issue of the problem. The Palestinian people cannot be left out of the table when it comes to a resolution or an accord dealing with the conflict.
Okay, so the root issue of which problem specifically?
Of the problem. Do you agree with the legal settlements in the West Bank?
With the illegal settlements? So it is...
Do you consider settlements illegal?
No.
Under international...
That's insane, by the way. Oh, he's dog walking this gremlin. To be honest, this is one of those issues that's so like obviously wrong that it doesn't matter how good of a debate lord you are. if one side has like pretty elementary basic facts, like if they have a somewhat decent understanding of the things that took place, even when you look at the asymmetry of violence, you can usually deal with a person. And Muhammad here obviously is very knowledgeable on the issue as well. So overall, it's truly indefensible. It's a truly indefensible thing. It's not really easy. That's the reason why most people that want to defend Israel don't necessarily defend Israel on the facts. They usually defend Israel by saying that, by trying to trap you into saying something and then claiming that it's anti-Semitic. Like they'll turn around and be like, oh, well, what you said was actually anti-Semitic. And most people don't want to be bigoted. And so they're like fearful. I mean, I tell my friends all the time, like, listen, it's understandable if you don't speak on this issue at all beyond the fact that you're, for Palestinian emancipation. Because like people are pretty vicious. And if you're not well equipped to counter certain talking points, like people will bully you. They will absolutely say, they will absolutely make you feel like you're a piece of shit. They'll be like, oh, how dare you say these sorts of things? You just don't understand the situation. It's complex. It's complicated. It's like, it's not complicated at all. And the reality of the matter is like most of the arguments devolve into you're being anti-Semitic. That's like the only counter that defenders of Israel have in this situation. Think about it. What argument does Israel have? What argument? What argument can you have for apartheid? You don't have one. There is no argument against apartheid, nor there is any argument against. That's precisely the reason why, especially when someone like Ben Shapiro starts speaking on the matter, when they're like an ultra Zionist, when they are incredibly invested in all the most violent things that Israel does, then you're going to come across like a idiot. Like he literally just said, I don't think the settlements are illegal. They are. Like, what do you mean? That they just are. They're immoral. They're wrong. They are illegal. And that's precisely the reason why when Muhammad retorts here and says, well, they're illegal under international law by the UN, he will go, I don't care. The UN sucks.
International law, it's considered illegal.
Yeah, that is not true.
The UN and most international foreign bodies have decided that those settlements are legal. Now,
Yeah,
do you
the
think that
US
that's just the case of...
I think the UN is trash. But
So that's what I was going to say, is that...
Do you think the United States is trash? They consider the settlements to be illegal too. So like, there's nothing. The UN is trash. The EU is trash. Everyone's anti-Semitic. Lo and behold, all of these international institutions are actually operating on anti-Semitism. Yeah, Your Honor, I don't... I mean, how could this be treated as anything but like a sovereign citizen saying, Your Honor, is this is this maritime admiralty court? Because I am under no obligation to listen to your laws. Okay? That's it. That's what you're doing in this situation.
If the UN is trash,
yes.
If nobody around this area can be brokered into as a third party, if Israel's not allowing third party investigators to come to the Gaza Strip and determine what's happening there, who can justify?
Yeah, ironically enough, the UN created Israel, but that's besides the point.
Who can
Let's
have
continue.
the moral authority in the region and say that this is what's happened, that this is a reason of this, or that putting them towards the backside of the conflict is this reason? I need to understand from you, what's your prescription for the area, for the Palestinian people? Are you like Ben Gvir, who says that there's three options: willful emigration of the Palestinian people, like live under subjugation as a second-class citizen of Israeli rule, or third, die? What's the option?
No, I mean, moderating and then electing a government that is worthy of actually governing its people and not stealing billions of dollars from its people, either the Palestinian Authority, Islamic Jihad, or Hamas, would be an excellent start.
So I need to understand, do you feel like...
What, Big F? What's happening? I'm not seeing it. Oh, I'm seeing it now. What the Oh no, I'm effing a little bit of a F. What the is happening? Ay. Okay, this time I had 600 frames drop, which is a total of 10 seconds. 10-second frame drop. 10-second frame drop. Let's continue.
Like Jihad or
He made
Hamas.
a good point. He asked, there's three options: voluntary migration, leave the area, remain a second-class citizen under brutal Israeli subjugation, or die. So which out of these three options is the best for the Palestinians? And Ben Shapiro actually had no decent retort to that, because there is no good retort to that other than, I mean, what he privately thinks, which is die, or any number of the things that are happening, probably die or probably, forced to be evacuated from the area. But he can't say that publicly because, that goes beyond the boundary of permissible bigotry, right? So now he's going to do this thing where he describes all of the reasons, with Islamophobia, of course, all of the reasons as to why Palestinians cannot coexist alongside Israelis. Oh, they have bad leadership. Oh, they're barbaric. Oh, they do this, they do that. They're rapists, they're monsters, yada, yada, yada. Okay? I do not understand where the I don't understand why the F'ers are happening. I don't see an F on my end.
Why? What's the option?
No, I mean, moderating and then electing a government that is worthy of actually governing its people and not stealing billions of dollars from its people, either the Palestinian Authority, Islamic Jihad, or Hamas, would be an excellent start.
So I need to understand, do you feel like they have the opportunity to do so when they're under the subjugation of 17 years of a blockade by an occupying power? If for 17 years, since the disengagement of Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip, Israel was able, by the flick of a switch, to turn off the electricity, water supply, and fuel reserves. Right now, we know that in the north of Gaza, up until today, 2 weeks went by where no humanitarian aid was going in. There is no Rafah border anymore. There is no humanitarian going through there. It's been demolished.
Okay.
And then in the other,
it's not true that humanitarian aid is not going in. Actually, just a couple of days ago,
just a couple of days ago, because since October 1st, there was no aid going to the northern part of Gaza.
Because there are ongoing anti-terror operations in the north of Gaza.
So does that mean that the civilians who are in the northern Gaza are not subject to humanitarian aid because there's a military action by an occupying force?
It means that there's no actual excellent way of distributing that aid. This has been a major problem with the humanitarian aid throughout. The last time they sent 100 trucks, this is what I was going to mention, they sent 100 trucks of humanitarian aid in just a couple of days ago.
Before October 7th, 500 trucks were needed to sustain life in Gaza. 100 trucks were supposed to say thank you.
At least half of the aid is being stolen by Hamas and then resold at higher prices.
I need you to understand that almost every international humanitarian rights group says that this humanitarian crisis is man-made. It is man-made.
I agree that it's man-made.
And I know who you think the man is.
Yes.
I'm telling you, there's only...
It's not Hamas. Wait, does Hamas have any agency here at all?
I'm telling you that right now, if you want fair...
Do the Palestinians have any agency?
It is ridiculous when we are talking about the Israeli blockade and he's like, it's because Hamas is stealing all the food. You are out of your mind, dog. You are out of your mind. You're just making this up. It's so goddamn frustrating, dude.
The Palestinians absolutely have agency, but again, with an occupying force, what does that agency limit to? If a Gaza fisherman can't go 6 miles past the nautical line that Israel has arbitrarily placed, what agency?
That's the same thing Tony at CBS said about Palestinian agency. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just like the idea that Palestinians voted for Hamas so they deserve this is already a stupid concept, considering that the last time an election occurred was in 2006, and we already know that half the Palestinian population is under the age of 18 and therefore did not participate in that election, regardless of who you vote for. Who you vote for does not mean you get to be. You don't deserve to be, even if every single person had actually voted for Hamas. And ultimately, it's not like there wasn't secular leadership amongst the Palestinians historically. They were. Israel assassinated every single one of those people. Okay? Decade after decade after decade of ritualistic humiliation, murder, assassinations, a blockade to boot, sieges over and over again. And yeah, of course, people are going to be like, yeah, f these guys. Yeah, there is no evidence whatsoever that Hamas is stealing aid, for the record. Headline from this morning: more Israeli lies and deception to justify the starving of Palestinians. U.S. envoy: Israel hasn't provided specific evidence Hamas is stealing aid shipments. They just say that, and no one can verify it. But if you can't verify it, you know what you can do? Imagine that Palestinians are barbaric, rapist, bloodthirsty monsters. So that must be happening.
Why do you think that Israel placed that line?
Again, that's what I'm telling you is that how
just
do you
for fun
expect,
or what? Do
again,
you think Israel wants soldiers in the Gaza Strip?
Again, here's the thing. I know that high level cabinet members in the Israeli government right now is saying that we're going to resettle in Gaza. That this is the plan. That we're not going to release
position in the Israeli government.
Do you agree with that position?
No, with the resettlement of the Gaza Strip, no.
Okay, so you want the Gaza Strip to remain Palestinian land?
I'm perfectly happy for it not to remain Israeli land, but that doesn't mean that it can be governed by the current entities that the Palestinians are choosing to govern themselves. The last entity they did, Israel pulled out in 2005. A terrorist group now ruled the region and then promptly used it to build kilometers of terror tunnels that outsized the London subway network.
I want you to understand, Ben, that there is is no way for any type of democratic institution or process to happen in the Gaza Strip when there's an occupying force who will go and subvert it. If you have Israeli parliament
So they don't
members-
have agency.
If you have, I mean, it's hard to when there's an occupying force under
Actually,
your throat.
believe it or not, it actually is not that hard not to vote for terrorists.
It 100%.
It is not.
It's not that hard to not vote for terrorists. So why the does the Israeli society vote for them every single time? And they don't even have a colonial occupier destroying their lives. They just vote for the of it. Yeah. I slap the terror sticker on everything that Palestinians do. I win the argument. This is it. It's quite simple, really. If I say everything that the Palestinians do are terroristic, then you can justify whatever kind of inhumane, cruel, barbaric nonsense you subject them to, you know?
It's not. It's 100% impossible for you to go and make that distinction when there is no alternative. Right now,
That is not.
Like, it just doesn't. It's so stupid. Ben Shapiro endorsed Trump. Yeah, I know. He loves Donald Trump. Also, it's really funny when people go, it's really easy not to vote for a terrorist. What are you saying, Ben? What the fuck are you saying? You already admitted that they haven't had an election since 2006. Not only that, but also beyond that, we're in the United States of America, and the two choices are basically marginally worse Hitler. What the fuck do you mean? No, it's actually pretty hard not to vote for a rabid psychopathic administration.
Not true. There's not an alternative.
no, there is no
It-
alternative to life under no occupation for the Gaza Strip. Again, I'm asking you simply, is that right now, if you have Israeli parliament members, Knesset members who are saying that we plan on resettling Gaza, that this is not
That is
Israeli
not
land.
a government position.
No, again, these are people who can
That is a government position. Ben, it is a government position. They're in the government. And not only is it the government position, your position is always, oh, well, after the settlers do the deed, then I think it's good. You already said that you don't think the settlements are illegal. You're a terrorist. Like, straight up. I hate this. I hate this double standard. Like, you can't, like, nobody will ever see Ben Shapiro in that way. No one will ever look at what Ben Shapiro is saying as like the actual real pro-terrorism argument because of the way that the American society is aligned with Israel, because of the way that like our understanding of violence works. We just never think that non-state entities, non-state actors are ever in the right until, multiple decades later when we write it in the history books as like, yeah, okay, maybe they had some good points. It's very frustrating.
fracture the government of Israel in
You
an
know what is a
instant.
government position? The government of Hamas that is currently holding 100 hostages, including babies. This war would be over today.
And the
if
hostages
Hamas-
should be, and no civilians should be involved in the
Should
conflict.
Hamas surrender?
So I want to
Should Hamas
ask you,
surrender?
I think that there should be no civilians involved in this.
Should Hamas surrender?
Surrender to who?
To the Israeli government.
Will the Israeli government stop bombarding civilians if that is? Because
If
right
Hamas
now,
surrenders, yes.
Because right now we saw them march from the north to the south of Gaza, and they said that the whole goal of this war was to what? Was to return the hostages, correct?
I mean, there was a dual goal.
There was
One
a
was to
dual
destroy
goal.
Hamas,
Now,
and the other was to return the
See,
hostages.
that's the thing. When I come to the table to argue with someone, I want to assume that there's good faith, not that there's a dual goal or dual ambitions in the process.
Of course, there's a dual
'Cause
goal.
that's
If
right
there were
now-
no hostages, the singular goal would be the destruction of Hamas.
Okay, now understand this. Netanyahu will continue.
He just basically said that hostages are because he's such an ultra Zionist. He's like, well, if there was no hostages, and the goal would be still the destruction of Hamas. Okay, well, we're watching the destruction of Hamas unfold right now. So you're saying you're pro with or without the hostages, Ben? You basically admitted the Israeli government's position, dumbass. So stupid.
continue to project this war because he's facing crime and bribery charges. So there's no. Again, I need to understand, Ben. If there's
There
no.
was a full
Oh yeah, this anti-Semitism. This 47-minute video this 47-minute video hopefully will be able to explain my positions against Ethan's criticisms. Okay, I don't know why they titled it like that. That's pretty funny.
full-on unity government in Israel, including his opposition, until it's
And unity government will not let him end this war except the ceasefire
Unity
deal because
government
they can
included people
fracture the
like-
government. Yes or no?
No, the-
Can Ben Gvir, if he decides to call for snap elections, can him and Smotrich not decide that this is what we want to do, and Benjamin Netanyahu is immediately supposed to,
I promise
to
you,
run for prime minister?
If there were
elections?
if there were snap elections today, Netanyahu first of all is leading in the polls. But even if he were not leading in the polls, Benny Gantz, Gadi Eisenkot, Naftali Bennett, people who are actually running in the election against Bibi Netanyahu, would be pursuing extremely similar policies in the Gaza Strip simply because Israel cannot allow Hamas.
He's right. Ben is right. And this is the problem with people who are pro-Israel. They're so invested in this alternative reality in their mind that what Israel is doing is right, that they do not come across, they think that they're coming across as like sane. Well, everybody in Israel agrees with this policy, so obviously it's good. Whereas to the rest of the world that is not as like invested, to the rest of the world that is not as invested, they literally look at what Ben just said and go, that's insane. You just admitted that the government's position across the board, including the opposition, is full scale. Ben doesn't think it's, but the average person does. Or even if they don't have the capacity to communicate that is, they still think it is completely unacceptable. So when he says like, well, the entirety of the Israeli government's position here is in line with what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing, well, then you up. All right, let's keep going.
Hamas to continue to govern the Gaza Strip.
Awesome. So then the hostages are placed second to this. So this isn't about, there can't be two dual goals.
Of course there can.
How?
Why could there not be two
Because
dual
one
goals?
of these goals is completely antithetical to returning to the last one.
What? How?
Because when you...
in fact, they are deeply connected. If Hamas does not surrender, how are the hostages getting back?
Again, I'm saying because...
Oh, good question, Ben. Remember in the first stage of the ceasefire, there was a 7-day process where there was a 7-day ceasefire, and that was the largest number of hostages that were ever extracted in the 1 year of this ongoing. Turns out that you actually can do that. The problem is you don't want to believe that. So you just, I guess, forgot that that happened.
When every operation that dealt with returning the hostages involved the death of arguably more civilians and more hostages in the area.
I can't believe they did this to Muhammad. I can't believe that. He should have kept cooking.
Hey, Ben, nice to meet you.
Don't shake his hand.
So just returning to the prompt that the war in Gaza wouldn't have started if Trump were president.
Yes.
The reason that I disagree with that so vehemently is just looking at history. I don't think that the bombing of the Beirut embassy would have happened if Jimmy Carter had won in 1980. I don't think that Nixon is responsible for the 6-Day War. For the Yom Kippur War. I don't think that if Dewey had defeated Truman, that Israel wouldn't be independent. Israel is a sovereign state. They make their own decisions based on their own security issues. We're both Jewish men. I think we can both say that Jews are very independent and that we don't need to be told what the U.S. government wants to be able to make our own decisions. So for all those reasons, again, just looking at the history of the region and how all these other wars developed because of situations on the ground, I just think that it's unfair to say that either political party in the United States is responsible for the war-making policy of the Israeli government, whoever is in charge.
Okay, but we're not discussing the war-making policy, which was a response to October 7th. The claim was really whether October 7th would have been launched by Hamas, knowing that Israel has complete military superiority over Hamas, which Hamas must have known. Why that gets launched on October 7th, why that didn't happen, for example, under Donald Trump or any time in the intervening 17 years from when Hamas took over the Gaza Strip. And the rationale that I'm suggesting is that basically, the Biden administration came in. They decided to take an antithetical view to the Saudi government, not just the Israeli government. They came in, they were very unfriendly to Saudi Arabia, for example, delisting the Houthis as a terrorist group. They started to draw closer to the Iranians in an attempt to pursue a revision of the JCPOA. They attempted to draw distance between themselves and the Israeli government. Hamas saw this, Hamas and Iran saw this, and they decided that the best way to put pressure on the Abraham Accords more generally and to forestall any prospective peace deal between the Saudis and the Israelis would be to...
It's so funny. He just keeps repeating this argument as though, like, it's the lack of agency afforded to the Palestinians that caused October 7. And this dumbass keeps repeating it as though it was actually really good. Like, someone should ask Ben, what kind of material support does Saudi Arabia ever offer the Palestinian cause? Like, what have the Saudis done for the Palestinians? What have they? Saudi Arabia and Israel's relationship was already above board. It just wasn't on paper. Having direct flights from Tel Aviv to Riyadh is not going to change the dynamic at all. He is just routinely repeating this wrong point.
To launch the attack right now.
See, and what I would argue is what was much more relevant to the launching of the attack on October 7th was Yahya Sinwar being released by the Israeli government in exchange for the name of the soldier.
Gilad Shalit.
Gilad Shalit, thank you.
That happened 10 years ago. I mean, that was 2000.
I know, and I think you would acknowledge that the sophistication of this plan would have taken years. I don't think it was planned in relation to anything the U.S. government was doing. Again, I point to all of these other attacks and wars that happened over the year.
What? What does this have to do with anything? What?
It had nothing to do with who was in power in the White House. It had to do with specific situations between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I just don't think it's helpful for us to pretend that the U.S. is the determining factor in this war. I think you would agree.
Well, the reason it's helpful, I think, is because
Are we talking historically? Because historically, Saudis did a lot. Recently, they haven't. Yeah, bro. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about MBS. Okay, I'm talking about the last 20 years. Also, this person's argument is like kind of silly too. But
when it comes to foreign policy, this goes to sort of a root issue about foreign policy that's rather interesting to discuss, and that is the belief that when the United States draws away from American allies, when the United States draws significant distance with American allies, particularly...
Dog, Palestinians do not give a about America's allegiances to Saudi Arabia. They just don't want to be killed by Israel. He's arguing that by releasing Sinwar 10 years ago, they allowed an opportunity for him to plan October 7th. So who is truly responsible for October 7th? Yeah, but that's still stupid. It's like this, ironically enough, denies agency to the Palestinians, which is the idea that like it's actually Yahya Sinwar, or in Lebanon, it's actually Hassan Nasrallah that is like mind controlling entire populations into not liking Israel. That's not how this works. Yahya Sinwar is but a name, okay? Hamas is simply an idea. And you cannot kill an idea. You can kill a man. You can't kill an idea. The idea is that Palestinians are worthy of dignity. They're worthy of freedom. They're worthy of not being destroyed by Israel. If it's not Yahya Sinwar, it's someone else. That is how it works. That is how it's always worked. This is a reality that Israel itself also recognizes, acknowledges. I mean, Yoav Galan himself openly said there is no military solution to Hamas. Yoav Galan said that. He's an ICC arrest warrant war criminal, you know? Application.
In regions of
drawing away from American allies.
That's not his argument. His argument is that the exchange, like other things that happen in Israel, happen independent of the U.S. I mean, I don't agree with that argument either. I don't think Israel gets to do anything it wants to. Well, there are some things that it gets to do, but America just lets it happen usually.
Allies. That's Trump that did that. He's the one that says NATO's a bad idea and us being allies and having an internationalist foreign policy is a bad thing.
To be fair, the actual policy of President Trump, which was to actually increase the amount of funding from each NATO nation into NATO.
No. That was Obama.
No,
that was Obama in 2014.
That was.
Okay. It was.
They increased the amount of defense
Trump
spending
ran on
under
that
NATO.
issue.
Yes, and that was what.
But Obama's the one where the policy was actually implemented.
Well, no, the policy was also
about the 2% goal.
The increase happened under
and on
President
top of
Trump.
that, NATO expanded under Biden. So
NATO expanded under Biden as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It didn't expand under Biden preemptive to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
No, I'm not arguing that. But I'm saying if the question is who has been more dedicated to our system of alliances overseas, it's clearly the Democratic Party.
I mean, that is clearly not true. If you're talking...
Whoa, Ben. I mean, I think he got you there. Never mind. I take it back. I mean, I'm no big city lawyer, nor am I a NATO voter, but if both parties here are supposed to be pro-NATO, then yeah, like it's not even an argument. America definitely is more America is definitely way more careful and way more interested in beefing up our security contracts. I am a NATO voter. That's why I'm writing Ryan Ruth.
About what has effectually made American allies stronger, the answer would not be the policies of the Biden administration. I mean, if we want to talk Ukraine, we can. We can talk about the slow walking of aid to Ukraine throughout the Ukraine war. I'm a big advocate of the idea that the United States actually should have pursued a policy of rushing more aid into Ukraine and then pursuing an off-ramp as soon as possible, sort of Henry Kissinger's suggested policy early on in the war. But if you're talking about...
So then we would agree that it's a mistake for Republican congressional officials in Congress to cut aid to Ukraine. Okay.
Yes. When it comes to the Israel-Gaza war, the Israel-Hamas.
It always feels like Ben Shapiro has a lot of disagreements with Donald Trump. He doesn't like Donald Trump's Ukraine policy. He doesn't like Donald Trump's immigration policy, seemingly. He's pro-NATO. I don't get it. Why is Ben still voting for Donald Trump? He didn't even vote for him in 2016, which means he voted for him in 2020, and we know he has fundraised for Donald Trump. So what's that about?
war, which is what this led off with.
Yeah.
Again, my contention is that the timing was driven specifically by a desperate hope by Hamas and Iran to break the burgeoning Saudi-Israeli and Sunni-Israeli alliance that was happening in the Middle East. And the best way they could see to do that was to launch an attack to bring up the issue that had largely been sidelined by the Abraham Accords, because it turns out that a great way to make a deal between countries that disagree on issue A is to make a deal on issues B,
But
C, and
that
D.
presumes that the Sunni American alliance against the Shia Iranian-backed alliance only started under Trump, and that's just clearly not true. We've been aligned with Sunni-led governments for at least the last 50 years.
The realignment of the Middle East under
the
President
alliance
Obama.
with Saudi Arabia goes back to World War II.
I mean, of course, that's true. It's also true that Barack Obama's distancing from Saudi Arabia in favor of, for example, the JCPOA, which Saudi opposed, so did the Israelis, so the Bahrainis, so did all the countries of the Abraham Accords. And then the return to that ideology under Joe Biden exacerbated potential conflict in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah, Joe Biden really returned to that. Obama, the secret Shia. Obama was a secret Shia, chat. And so was Joe Biden. Yusuf al-Bidan. Many people don't know this. Obama's middle name is literally Hussein. Barack Hussein Obama, obviously secret Shia. And Yusuf al-Bidan, also a secret Shia. Everybody knows this. That really pissed off the Gulf states for some reason. And then simultaneously Hamas attacked. None of this has to make sense, by the way. I mean, this not making any sense. Like, he has not tied anything together. It's wild how bad his argument is. It's wild how bad his argument is here. He's just like, Donald Trump would have stopped October 7th. It never would have happened. Why? Because Saudi Arabia would have been aligned with Israel. It's like, okay, but that's not how October 7 happened. That had nothing to do with that, except it exacerbated the problem.
I don't agree with that, but if anybody else wants to go, we don't have a lot of time. Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing okay. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Trust interview taken down? What trust interview?
So, I guess my first lead into this question is, can you tell me what did Trump do to potentially prevent this war from happening? And what did Biden not do, or what did he fail at that ultimately caused it to happen?
Okay, sure. So the Trump administration, by drawing closer to Saudi Arabia, by attempting to broker the Abraham Accords and successfully doing so with a multiplicity of countries in the region, weakened Iran. He also weakened Iran by keeping massive sanctions.
Yeah, he really weakened Iran. Yeah. Okay. You want to know something? You want to know how I would make this argument? If I was a ginormous piece of shit, I'm going to try to steel man this argument. Okay? If I was in his shoes, because I'm more knowledgeable than he is on not only American foreign policy, but specifically about what other countries are doing, I would make the argument that Joseph Robinette Brandon was significantly weaker on China than Donald Trump was. He even said that we have no business fighting with China at a certain point to that silly ass argument. And then claim that the worst thing that Joseph Robinette Brandon ever allowed to happen in the region, aside from the $6 billion of unfrozen assets that went back to Iran, he could say that. Well, to be fair, Trump did kill a Quds Force major, but I'm not sure I would go so far as to say that Iran was greatly weakened by a Trump presidency overall. No. Trump just implemented a sanctions regime on Iran. And then, that's the other part of it that I forgot. Barack Obama set the stage for normalizations of relations with Iran. He signed off on the Iran denuclearization agreement. Okay. Donald Trump also fucking cast that denuclearization agreement aside and accelerated the Iran nuclearization program, and the likelihood of happening. The likelihood of its happening became a reality because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump also added additional sanctions to Iran. Iran still tried to play ball after Donald Trump said no more denuclearization agreement. Fuck you. Okay. Iran still tried to follow the protocols, and Donald Trump then added additional sanctions for no reason whatsoever. So that also is another reason why Donald Trump fucked up the situation further, because he was deeply in the pocket of Israel. He was way more pro-Israel than any other president. Okay, sorry, before Joseph Robinette Brandon. That's just the truth. Okay, that's just the truth. And as things goes, if you let Israel do its damn thing, it's gonna go nutty mode. And we saw that. We saw that with Joe Biden. Okay? Now, we're not going to watch this yet. If I were to make an argument, a better argument than him, I would say that China normalizing relations with Iran and Saudi Arabia was a more significant aspect of this, was a more significant problem in terms of like Yusuf El-Bidan, the secret Shia, allowing that ceasefire process to take place, because now Iran had more reason and more opportunity to actually interfere with Israel's affairs in the region and technically threaten Israel directly, or even neighboring regions. That's what you could say, even though technically it doesn't matter.
In place, which really prevented them from spreading terror in the same sorts of ways that they did under the Obama administration or the Biden administration as well. The Trump administration was very clearly and obviously pro-Israel in a way that the Biden administration has not been. They've been a little bit more shaded on the issue.
In what ways?
Biden administration has been shaded on the issue more so than Donald Trump is crazy, dog. I mean, where's the limit? Like, what do you mean? It's unlisted. They unlisted it for some reason. Reuters says they are going to respond. Wait, what? Iran said, I mean, it's War Monitor. I don't know. Iran's semi-official Tasnim outlet, citing sources, Iran is prepared to respond to Israel's aggression. It depends. I mean, that's War Monitor. I don't know.
So the United States, for example, acknowledging under Donald Trump that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel, continuation of military aid to Israel.
I like that he just keeps explaining why October 7 happened. Like, the argument that he's presenting is that Trump would have never allowed October 7 to happen. And it's hilarious because everything that you just said that Trump did is exactly what set the stage for October 7 to happen. Also, Biden has said more times than Donald Trump that he is a Zionist. And he's been saying it for a lot longer than Donald Trump publicly, too. Biden has literally outflanked Israeli officials in times of conflict to be like, I would have killed babies if I could. So, no, there are very few people in the American government that are as pro-Israel as Joseph Robinette Brandon. Straight up. Very few people. Like, Donald Trump has done a ton for Israel. A lot more than any other country, a lot more than any of our other allies. But there's a reason for that. It's because Sheldon Adelson gave him hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay? If Sheldon Adelson and other pro-Israeli groups had not given him so much money and made very clear-cut demands, okay, Donald Trump wouldn't be as pro-Israel. I know that for a fact. Now, this doesn't really matter because they did give him that and he did do those things. And now Miriam Adelson is also giving him another $100 million. So obviously he's going to continue being pro-Israel, okay? Joseph Robinette Biden, on the other hand, is an ideological Zionist, like committed, a committed Zionist. Saying that like one is, I guess, more Zionist than the other, or one is more pro-Israel than the other is kind of stupid because in terms of actions, they're both maxed out on Israel defense. But in terms of ideology, Biden absolutely is more pro-Israel ideologically because Donald Trump is too narcissistic to care about anything. He's just like, oh, you give me money? All right, I'm pro-Israel. I love Israel.
Without any attempt to condition or slow walk, Joe Biden from the very beginning of the war was basically attempting to slow walk or condition aid based on certain things that were happening in the war. This sort of stuff and the preview of that sort of stuff before October 7th, distance that was drawn between.
This is pretty crazy how bad he is at defending Israel. I'm kind of shocked. 12 months in, you would have thought that he would have had better talking points, right? Like he's kind of flustered.
Between the Israeli government and the American government leads opponents of Israel to believe that the United States is not going to be in their corner, and that leads to
Do you think
greater
that the
conflict.
United States has, in any way, shape, or form, not shown that they are not in support of Israel? I mean, one of Kamala Harris's talking points, every time she starts is that she believes that Israel has the right to defend itself.
I mean, so just this week, the Biden administration put forward an open threat to embargo arms to Israel earlier this year.
Because
there was
of
an actual
why?
Embargo against Israel.
Because of why?
Well, I mean, they're claiming that it's because of lack of humanitarian aid in the northern Gaza
Yes.
Strip. That can be their claim. I don't actually. Okay, anybody who claims that there's going on in the Gaza Strip does not understand the definition of the word
Don't
genocide.
tell me what's the definition of
A systematic destruction of every member of a population.
is Israel's system?
But no.
Are they on their way to completing and fulfilling?
No, there are 2 million.
Potentially, if they kept on going the same way that they're doing, could they completely eradicate
Israel has
the Gaza Strip?
Israel has the military capacity to do that, and they have certainly not done that. And the reason I can say they have not done that is you know how long it would take them at the current rate to do that, especially given the fact that they are completely targeting terrorists.
Are they completely targeting Are children terrorists? Are the children the dead babies? The kids?
Civilian collateral damage is not the same thing as targeting civilians.
But is that not a byproduct of?
No, that is not. Is where you systematically destroy a population specifically because you wish to.
Yeah, no, Israel does fit the definition of, but that's neither here nor there. It does. Complete destruction of all civil society, civil infrastructure, and mass population transfer as you continuously bomb the safe zones that you change the designation of into safer zones absolutely fits that bill. The ultimate goal there is either complete ethnic transfer or complete wipeout, ethnic cleansing. Israel not only targets civilians deliberately, but they also target aid workers, UN aid workers, not just UNRWA UN aid workers, but like white UN aid workers as well. Israel deliberately targets Westerners from World Central Kitchen that they actually engage in a process of deconfliction on. They target peacekeeping forces in Lebanon. They target everyone in areas that they want to bomb. So the idea that they're not engaging in ethnic cleansing is really stupid.
To kill the civilian population. That is it.
He's right. That's not very pro-life.
Well, it turns out that Hamas is not pro-life when they hide behind children and women.
And neither is Israel when they drop bombs and nukes on Palestinian villages and families.
Are you suggesting that Israel is using nuclear weapons?
Is a bomb automatically nuclear?
No.
No, Israel's not dropping nukes, but it doesn't need to drop nukes. The nuclear fallout would be too damaging to Israel itself because the distance between Gaza and like Israel proper is too small. However, Israel has dropped metric tons, 5 metric tons of more than 5 metric tons of munitions, which is the equivalent, I believe, of like 5 nukes or 6 nukes at this point. Doesn't really matter. It's not a direct one singular nuke, but the damage that it has done to Gaza is both order of magnitude on the munitions front, and also in terms of the damage done to all of the infrastructure is the equivalent of multiple nukes. So the idea that are you saying Israel's using nuclear weapons is something that he's going to grab onto because he wants to catch an own here because he's slipping. But that's neither here nor there. Also, in order to prove, you just have to prove intent for the entire reason why we have rules and laws around this sort of thing is to stop it before it finalizes. Okay? The Holocaust is even though not every single Jewish person died. Okay? Many such cases. Armenian, still not every single Armenian died. Doesn't matter. Still Ben Shapiro's definition of does not matter in this process. The entire purpose of defining it and specifically targeting the intent and the actions and the devastation is so that we can stop it. The goal is to stop it before it's completed. Yes, mass displacement also constitutes mass ethnic transfer, population transfer on the basis of ethnicity, which is precisely what's happening. So it's not like, oh, well, the Holocaust only killed 6 million Jews, so it's not an argument that I would ever allow in this community, and no one would ever allow it. And saying that only 52,000 Palestinians have been directly, or 45,000 Palestinians have only been killed by direct Israeli gunfire or Israeli rockets, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been killed either under the rubble or because they can't get access to health care, medical care, access to adequate humanitarian aid, which Israel is voluntarily denying. Does not change the reality that it's not because 2.5 million people haven't been all slaughtered so far.
Not even wrong.
So that's what I said, a bomb.
And okay, Israel uses as small munitions as possible to target.
Yeah, that's complete.
Specific terrorists Okay, they do this using drone technology. They have to go through 4 layers of legal before any strike is actually approved by the upper layers of the Israeli government. I've seen this actual process in action. I've seen the actual footage at Palmachim Air Force Base in which Israel goes through the process and shows exactly how they have to go through multiple legal steps in order to green light a hit.
Yeah, is that what happened with the World Central Kitchen bombing? Is that what happened with Hin Rajab? Is that what happened every single day? Israel bombed the Jubilee refugee camp again, 150 dead, many women and children. That was all deliberate. Okay, well, that's not an argument you want to make, I think, because then you're saying they're deliberately killing tens of thousands of children. So, again, it's still a whether you agree with it or not. It is a you agree with the reality that it's a just agree with the ethnic cleansing. After all, Ben Shapiro literally wrote an article in 2012, I believe it was in 2012, might be a little bit earlier, titled "Transfer is Not a Dirty Word," in which he argued for Ben Shapiro famously apologized for that. It's one of the only things he's ever apologized for in terms of all of his old writings. He wrote an article where he advocated to round up every single Palestinian and then engage in mass population transfer. This is like definitionally. You wrote it in 2003. Okay, not 2012. Sorry. He has since apologized for this article. Okay, he has. The issue, however, is that you can see that he does not disagree with that sentiment at all. He actually likes that argument. He just apologized because, optically speaking, being a American Jewish conservative pundit who was in favor of doing it in writing was probably not the best idea for his career prospects. He doesn't agree with the optics of openly stating his desires, but he has, it's very clear that the things that he wrote here have not changed. The time for half measures is past. Bulldozing houses of homicide bombers is useless. Instituting ongoing curfews in air-populated cities is useless. Roadblocks, touch fences, midnight negotiations, and ceasefires are useless. Some have rightly suggested that Israel be allowed to decapitate the terrorist leadership of the Palestinian Authority. But he's talking about the West Bank here, by the way. The Palestinian Authority. But this, too, is only a half measure. The ideology of the Palestinian population is indistinguishable from that of the terrorist leadership. Half measures merely postpone our realization that the Arabs dream of Israel's destruction. Without drastic measures, the Arab dream will come true. In the short term, the establishment of a Palestinian state based in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza cuts Israel to the bone. In some places, Israel will be unthinkable 9 miles wide. In the long term, the growth of the hostile Israeli Arab population within the pre-1967 Israel bodes ill for the future of the Jewish state. As University of Haifa professor Aaron Sofer says, the trends and indicators all point to an economic and ecological catastrophe waiting to happen and the death knell of the ideological dream of a Jewish state. Here's the bottom line. If you believe that the Jewish state has a right to exist, then you must allow Israel to transfer the Palestinians and the Israeli Arabs. The Israeli Arabs, as in people living with Israeli citizenship inside of the Israeli boundary, Palestinian citizens of Israel, from Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and Israel proper. Every non-Jew, must be transferred. Rounded up and transferred. It's an ugly solution, but it's the only solution, and it is far less ugly than the prospect of bloody conflict ad infinitum. When two populations are constantly enmeshed in conflict, it is insane to suggest that somehow deep-seated ideological change will miraculously occur, allowing the two sides to live together. Welcome back, Adolf Hitler. This is literally Adolf Hitler, okay? He's saying that the ideological dreams of Palestinians and Arabs alike is virtually indistinguishable from terrorists, okay? And this is an argument is a pro argument. His opinion, although he apologized for this article, is genocidal. His position has not shifted from that.
On a terrorist, and they have they've released footage of this, them calling off particular strikes if they believe that the minimal amount.
That's why I'm grossed out by, there's also this, Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage. This is not a difficult issue. Hashtag settlements rock. I want people to understand, Ben Shapiro is a virulent Islamophobic anti-Arab piece of shit. He is quite literally a Hitlerian archetype, His ideological commitment to Zionism is virtually indistinguishable from that of the Nazi project. The only difference is the targets are not socialists and Jews, or socialist Jews rather, socialists and Jews. It's just socialists and Arabs, mostly Arabs, just Arabs, Muslims. Now, the difference, however, is that this kind of sentiment is totally permissible. Let me ask you this. My name is Hassan. I grew up Muslim in a Muslim country in Turkey. It actually is so gross and unimaginable for me to even say this, but if I were to write something similar about Israel and Jews alike, do you think that I would be able to, reach a position as high as Ben Shapiro has in polite society? Do you think that I would be able to have a multi-million-dollar media company that I sit on the throne of? Of course not. And I shouldn't. No one should. That's the difference. Okay? That's the difference. The difference here is that you substitute the words here from Arab to Jew, and you understandably are destroyed. You understandably are done. Okay? You're Nicholas Fuentes. You're done. Totally done. And you deserve to be. Okay? The reason why I'm mentioning this is because Islamophobia and anti-Arab sentiment alike is totally permissible. Okay? It's totally appropriate. It's totally permissible in ways that anti-Semitism, luckily, is not. I am not making an argument to make anti-Semitism permissible, contrary to what my naysayers who are regularly trying to smear me might say. I'm not saying that at all. So is anti-Semitism, to be honest. A view do it right. What? This is the double standard. That's it. Let's hear how else he defends this argument. For anyone who lived through the Holocaust or who has relatives who died in it, being called a Nazi is unspeakably terrible. That is a secret weapon of the Arabs. Anytime the Jews get wise and threaten mass expulsion of Arabs, the Arabs pull their big stick, equating Nazism with Zionism. Their cartoons merge swastikas with the stars of David. Their newspaper call Ariel Sharon Adolf Hitler. Their spokespeople cry, and the Jews cower in fear that they could be equated with their parents' murderers. The Jews don't realize that expelling a hostile population is a commonly used and generally effective way of preventing violent entanglements. There is no gas chambers here. It's transfer. After World War II, Poland was recreated by the Allied powers. In doing so, the Allies sliced off chunks of Germany and extended Poland west of the Oder-Neisse line. Anywhere from 3.5 million to 9 million people were forcibly relocated. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was pleased. In 1944, he explained to the House of Commons that expulsion is the method which, so far as we have been able to see, will be the most satisfactory and lasting. There will be no mixture of populations to cause endless trouble. A clean sweep will be made. Churchill was right. The Germans accepted the new border, and decades of conflict between Poles and Germans ended. Arab-Jewish conflict is exponentially more volatile than the German-Polish conflict ever was? What the? This entire argument basically is just him agreeing with Adolf Hitler, by the way. Anyway, if there was room in Germany for the German populations of East Prussia and of the other territories, as Churchill stated, there is certainly room in the spacious Muslim states of the Middle East for 5 million Palestinians and Israeli Arabs. If Germans, who had centuries-old connection to the newly created Polish territory, could be expelled, then surely Palestinians whose claim to Judea, Samaria, and Gaza is dubious at best can be expelled. The irony here, in terms of the population transfer, given what Israel is doing, is closer to Nazi Germany, is an argument for forcible population transfer of all Israelis. I would never make that argument because I think it is inhumane. As a matter of fact, it is the reason why I even say that there can only be a one-state solution going forward, given that there are 750,000 Jews living in occupied East Jerusalem and the West Bank. This is why I advocate for a one-state solution. This argument that Ben is presenting, if history had a slant toward justice, and if he was even remotely honest, considering the closeness in which Israel is operating to Nazi Germany, would mean that all of the Israeli Jews would be relocated forcibly. This is an incredible cruelty. Ben, on the other hand, is making this argument not for Poland, but instead, oh my God, I'm effing again. Big F this time, seemingly. I don't know why. Is back. Anyway, He ends the argument by saying it's time to stop being squeamish. Jews are not Nazis. Transfer is not and anything else isn't a solution. There's only one solution, and that is the final solution. That's basically what he's saying. So just understand who this man is and what his opinions are. And also understand there's mutual hatred there. A one-state solution looks impossible at the moment. Yeah, it doesn't. No, that's not how this works. Okay? That's not how this works even a little bit. Okay? If we're being honest and if we're being just, the only reason why the Palestinian resistance even exists is because Israel is occupying. Israel is occupying their lives. Okay? The idea that Israelis right now could not live side by side with the Palestinians is, destroyed by the fact that there are Palestinian citizens of Israel that live there right now. Now, there are improvements that must be made in their existence as well. Improvements that will come along with a one-state solution with equal representation regardless. It would just have to be a secular state. Okay? History is riddled with conflicts such as this one that inevitably get resolved, and people then live long and comfortable lives side by side without ever even thinking about all the wars that were waged that led to that position. Apartheid, post-apartheid South Africa, abolition of slavery, Algerian Revolution, and many such examples. Even the European continent has been in war for most of its history than not. And yet, we look back at those times in history books, and we now look at the European Union as a collaborative association of nation states that have free travel, unrestricted free travel amongst its own continental boundaries. So it's ridiculous to say these people cannot live side by side. Now, I'm not silly. I wouldn't say that there would be no violence whatsoever. Okay? Of course there would be. Most of that violence, at least when I look back at history, would come not from the Palestinian side, but instead would come from the Israeli side, settlers specifically, that would either A, not want to live side by side with the Palestinians, or they just would not accept it. They would not go down without a fight. Now, of course, in that process, you would have to deal with those people with civil governance within a civilian court, not necessarily a military court in the way that you deal with Palestinians currently in the West Bank.
Of civilian casualty damage cannot be maintained. Okay. So the basic idea, again, what you're talking about here is a population of 2 million Palestinians who are living in the Gaza Strip. The total number of war dead at this point, according to best available statistics, is somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 dead. Okay. That is not. It is a horrible, horrible war with horrible human casualties.
Fact check, which is run by Hamas.
40,000 dead. Okay. That is.
Population of the Palestinian territories was more than doubled. Population of the Palestinian territories was more than doubled to over 5 million in 2022. Gaza's health ministry, which is run by Hamas, said more than 42,700 civilians have been killed in the war. Good fact check. Thanks, Jubilee. Pieces of shit. Suck my dick. War.
It is a horrible, horrible war with horrible human casualties. That is not.
According to the UN, involves acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, or racial or religious group.
To your I will have to disagree with, but that brings me to my next question.
Name a war that isn't a by your definition.
One that isn't a. There's plenty. They've happened. I mean, I don't know.
My point.
This argument is stupid. Okay, like you can say that America did not have the intent of ethnically cleansing all Vietnamese when they invaded Vietnam, even though the outcome resembled it. That doesn't change the reality that this is still what Israel is conducting, especially as Israel has no international right or jurisdiction to defend itself, quote unquote, as a belligerent occupier over Palestinian territories.
Is that you don't seem to be distinguishing between the definition of a war and the definition of a. Well, you're saying that if mass.
The American Civil War, yeah, I mean, that's a good example.
Casualties happen, it is necessarily. I'm saying that is not true.
Got you. My next question, do you believe Israel has the right to the... Yeah.
What? Your argument about the West Bank, Israelis and the Palestinians living together peaceful in the West Bank, all kumbaya, is pretty dumb? I never said that. I said that there would be literally Ku Klux Klan style violence that Israeli gangs would subject Palestinians to, and it would have to be dealt with in a civil court system, okay, with rules, laws, and a police force. Violence would be likely in a one-state solution in the early stages, just like violence occurred in the Reconstruction period, where there were plenty of oppressive groups that wanted to restore the racial pecking order.
Oh, we're going to solve the Middle East in 56 seconds. Go for it.
Definitely not. My question is, if this were in the context of the United States, if everything were the same conditions of what you see to be terrorism, what you see to be from the Israel side, but it happened in
I'm very excited to see a TikTok debate lord take on Ben Shapiro on the issue of in like Israel doing it. I want to hear from him, and I want to hear from the other one too. That's actually very exciting because, like, unfortunately, my understanding of debate lords has been scarred a little bit by the likes of Divorcelli, who is, the #1 dick rider of Israel. So it's cool to see like a similar tone, but on the correct side of this argument.
the United States and the innocent civilians that died were United States citizens, would you see the same thing to be justified?
In what? So let's say that the United States had launched an attack across the Mexican border, specifically targeting civilians, slaughtering 1,200 of them, taking 250 hostage, and then the Mexican government had retaliated by attempting to solely target military targets, and our military men and women were hiding behind civilians. That would be the comparable condition.
Yeah, so U.S. citizens would be killed in hospitals and other things.
I would
like
not
that
blame the
in
Mexican
United
government
States.
for. I would not blame the Mexican government for targeting the personnel who were responsible for the
that's not what
kidnappings
I'm
and
asking,
murder.
do you see it to be ethically justified for them to kill innocent Americans at the same degree that they killed innocent Palestinians?
Again, the question of killing civilians is a question about who's hiding behind the civilians. Israel's not going out of its way to kill civilians.
What do you mean? The headquarters of the IDF is smack dab in the middle of Tel Aviv next to a goddamn hospital and I think a kindergarten. You would never make that argument. You would never make that argument for the United States of America, nor would you ever make that argument for Israel. When Iran struck Tel Aviv, I didn't hear Ben Shapiro turn around and be like, well, Israel has human shields.
That's not an answer to the question.
Yes, it is, because you're mischaracterizing the actual situation on the ground.
How?
Because of
I
what
said
I
the
just
same
described.
conditions. I said the same conditions.
We didn't solve it.
That sucks. I really wanted him to cook his ass, dude.
Oh, yeah, so many friends, so many friends. Let's see.
Yeah, the question is like, okay, Yahya Sinwar, killed by the Israeli state. Hassan Nasrallah, killed by the Israeli state in a crowded Beirut suburb. Okay? You consider that assassination to be a successful one. You probably celebrated it. Would you have the same exact energy if Iran struck Benjamin Netanyahu in his home in a crowded Israeli suburb where he resides, killing thousands of Israeli civilians? Would you consider that to be appropriate? Would you consider that to be good? You would not, Ben. You would find that to be an act of terrorism. That is because the underlying principle in his argument, and I know he doesn't consider that to be appropriate. The underlying principle in his argument is that only Israelis are human beings. Palestinians, Arabs, Christians, and Muslims alike are not human beings. The reason why I know this as a fact is because he considers October 7 to be the worst act of terror of all time. He does not look at the kibbutzim as human shields. That's it. He does not treat the kibbutzim and the people that lived inside of the kibbutzim as human shields that were unfortunate human collateral in a military operation. That is the problem. We know that he does not consider it that way because he's been, talking about October 7 since October 7. What is this? U.S. and Israeli officials said that 3 waves of strikes took place. The first waves focused on Iranian air defense systems, and the second and third waves focused on missiles and drone bases and production sites. I guess that's it. Parker's Part is on Jubilee's second channel.
How do you feel about Donald Trump saying that he wants to terminate
But what was the question, though?
all articles found in the Constitution?
I mean, to what comment are you specifically referring?
Like his tweet on Twitter.
I mean, show of hands. Who takes everything that Donald Trump says seriously in this room? If you take everything that Donald Trump says absolutely literally, you might need to see a psychiatrist.
I mean, the reverse of that is, do you take everything Kamala Harris says seriously? And he does, so I don't understand. You take everyone. He was the president. Do you think that a president can be unserious? Do you think that a president should be unserious? What a ridiculous way to defend Donald Trump. I don't really care about the January 6th one as much. I wanted to hear his Israel-Hamas. Donald Trump did not commit to a peaceful transfer of power. I don't necessarily care about it all that much. But it was a great video overall. I want to see my man cook his ass.
Kamala Harris is a threat to the institutions of our republic. All at once there, guys.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Sarah, nice to
Hey,
meet
nice to meet you.
How's it going? All right, so I want to make sure that we have clarity. Can you specify when you say she's a threat to the institution so we can have a direct dialogue?
Okay, so when I say a threat to the institutions of the republic, I'm really talking about the constitutional institutions. So the Constitution is a very finely wrought document. It's created after an enormous amount of consideration, and the checks and balances of the Constitution, ranging from the legislature and to the executive to the judiciary, those things, messing with the actual institutions, is in fact quite dangerous.
Pause. Can I inject? So
Sure.
when you say messing with, so we have somebody, our previous president, Donald Trump, right, who appointed people into the Supreme Court, right?
Yes.
And that have now put in act, they reversed Roe versus Wade, but they also put in act that a president can, under official acts, has immunity, legal immunity. So you don't think that messing with the three branches of governments that are official checks and balances in this country, what is based and paramount of the Constitution, which keeps it intact?
So as a constitutional lawyer, that's a fundamental mischaracterization of the Supreme Court decision. So the Supreme Court decision that you're referring to actually sets up a variety of sort of different options as to official actions by the president. There are unofficial actions by the president of the United States. If the president were to be sued for murdering somebody, for example, that would be outside the realm of official acts of the president of the United States. Then there are official acts of the president of the United States, which would be, for example, the president of the United States signs a tariff or executive order.
Understood.
And then there's sort of middle ground. The middle ground sets up a presumption that the president may have official action. It can be overcome by showing a cost to the actual cost of the system. That's what the Supreme Court decision says. So mischaracterizing it as President Trump could, for example, drone his opponents, that's not something that even Democrats believe. If Joe Biden believed that, presumably.
That is literally an argument that a United States Supreme Court justice directly asked, not the drone strike, but SEAL Team 6 was the method used in the assassination. A Supreme Court United States justice straight up asked Trump's own lawyers if that would be permissible, and the answer was yes. Okay? Ben Shapiro sitting here and yelling at woke college students about how, this is not what that means at all, does not change that reality. Okay? Technically, this just creates another limit to prosecuting a president. It doesn't mean that you cannot get prosecuted at all. It just means that there is an additional standard applied to presidential actions as long as they are considered presidential actions. What constitutes as presidential actions, however, is whatever the Supreme Court also decides. Okay? So technically, yes, Joseph Robinette Biden could send the SEAL Team 6 right now to go and assassinate Donald Trump. And if he were to be prosecuted for this act, the Supreme Court would defend it or at least analyze it as potentially a presidential act. If he were to launch a successful defense claiming, well, Trump constituted a grave threat to the American future and Trump engaged in treasonous acts and this extrajudicial killing, especially since Biden isn't running for re-election. So it's not even a private citizen. He's not doing this in the interest as a private citizen. He'd be doing this as the American president. It'd be hard to say that he was doing this as a private citizen, right? Which is the second indictment that came from Jack Smith after this Supreme Court decision came through, where Jack Smith refiled that exact same federal investigation, but this time taking out certain parts, Trump's communications as president with members of his cabinet and whatnot, and rewrote the exact same indictment as someone who was running for re-election. Joe Biden is not running for re-election. Technically, he could claim that Donald Trump, according to the internal reports from the DOJ, has engaged in acts that are considered treasonous, and therefore he had to be extrajudiciously killed by SEAL Team 6. That is definitely an argument that you could make with the current Supreme Court of the United States. That is an argument that you could absolutely make and even potentially defend yourself with. Didn't Biden try with pro-NATO operative Ryan Ruth? Yeah, I guess.
He would have tried to drone Donald Trump already. He doesn't like him very much.
Okay, so let me Thank you for that. So we don't have a lot of time, so I want to respond, all right?
Sure.
So let's move to something that actually happened. So we're not talking in hypotheticals. So Donald Trump was found guilty of inciting an insurrection. He has 34 felonies. So you don't think that that is a threat? You can't even vote
That's
in
not
this.
accurate. He wasn't found guilty of inciting an insurrection.
So
he was
let me ask
impeached
you-
by the
so
House
let
of
me ask you
Representatives.
point
He was
blank,
acquitted by
Ben,
the Senate.
did Donald Trump incite an insurrection?
He did not incite an insurrection by any legal standard. I disagree with a lot of the stuff he did between.
So I'm not standard. I'm asking you, did he incite an insurrection? Yes or no?
No, he did not incite an insurrection. Inciting usually requires you have to actually provoke the violence with intent to provoke the violence, not say peacefully protest
So
at
here's
the House of
so you know
Representatives,
this
for
as an
example.
attorney, right? Intent,
Yes.
right? Because you can have manslaughter and you can have murder. One's intent, one's not, but you still killed somebody, right?
Incitement
So-
is an intent crime. You cannot incite without intent on a
Okay,
on a legal basis.
let's go here as a teacher because I have a lot.
He did though. He did have intent. He straight up did. Like that rally and the subsequent protests and the march to the Capitol was direct intent. And there's also additional things that he did. There's also additional things that he did that also play into a grand conspiracy beyond his simple intent on January 6th. The other things he did, like the false electors, like the entire goal of stopping the authorization process that was taking place in Congress and trying to urge Mike Pence to stop the authorization, the vote certification process, was specifically so that they could put their false slate of electors in instead of the ones that were supposed to be certified. Now, it's a stupid way to try and change the outcome of an election. Of course, it wasn't going to work, but that's still illegal. You know what I mean? You can be a dumbass and try to rob a bank with a toy gun, but that doesn't absolve you of the crime of trying to rob a bank with a gun, you know?
A lot of history context, and it's somebody that works in criminal justice reform. So he has 34 felonies, correct?
I mean, he's not been convicted of, I mean, if you're talking about the New York case, you're talking about the New York case.
I'm talking about the 34 felonies
34
that he has
felon-
on his. He's a convicted felon, yes or no? Because I want to make sure if we're talking,
and
if we're
the-
saying that we're lawyers, we got to sit here and.
I'm so sorry. You've been voted out by the majority. Please
Right.
return to your seat.
That was fun. Thank you anyway.
Same argument for, by the way. I mean, you're not wrong. Ben denies that too, so.
Nothing I do is performative. So I'm not going to, for instance, I'll use Hasan as an example. I'm not going to talk to a black person like Trihex and say, hey, the N-word, it's always what do you think black people?
What a liar, dude. What a Weasley little liar, dude. What a Weasley little liar, dude. Holy dude. Holy dude. Literally lying. Still lying to his audience. Can someone at least enlighten Destiny that he's literally lying to his audience? What a piece of dude. Holy America deserved 9/11, dude. I'm saying it.
We're there to partner with them. We're not there doing our own thing. We're there partnering and training
In a video
and
game.
equipping and enhancing their capabilities. So that's part of what we're doing. And the other part is just knowledge. We want to know what's happening.
Like we totally brought it on ourselves, dude. Holy we did. We did in a video game.
Amazing.